Robert, so the Panthers. Playoff push. They've been on a really good, an excellent February. They've been doing well in March. How do you feel right now what the Panthers are doing? We're at the end of the season. They're a point behind New Jersey. Columbus and Philly are within reach, and they're playing Columbus. Just what do you think of the Panthers and what's been going on this season?
It's been absolutely incredible. It's been a very, very exciting season, and it's kind of the beauty of hockey is everybody stays competitive. It's a very exciting sport, and people that were counting us out 3 months ago were really underestimating what this team was capable of doing. And we have this incredible young core of guys who this was the team that basically brought us to the playoffs 2 years ago, and everybody right now is healthy. And we were finding success without everybody being on the ice at the same time. And you have these young guys that are locked up for the next several years, which as a longtime South Florida, just as a fan, is such a nice luxury for me. You're going to have Ekblad, you're going to have Huberdeau, you're going to have Barkov, you're going to have Trocheck for a number of years to come. So you can really sink your teeth into this team and watch them grow. And it's not going to be that South Florida sports curse that we had in the 90s where a team would find success and then they would immediately disband. And these guys are consistently delivering. And I've talked about it with several people within the organization and other teams in the league, and they say, if Barkov right now was playing in what they quote traditional hockey market, he would probably be one of the biggest stars in the league. And he's getting a lot of attention here in Florida, and we're getting a lot of that buzz. And as we fight for a playoff spot for the next few weeks, every game matters. So the game that we have at Columbus matters. When we play on Saturday home in Arizona, that's a huge game. And every game for the rest of the season is going to be exciting and electric. And that's something that when there's something worth coming out for and there's something worth supporting and worth seeing, the South Florida fan base absolutely responds. I remember 2 years ago when we made the playoffs and this building was, to use the wrestling term, they were packed to the rafters. They were hanging from the ceiling. And it was absolutely electric. And hockey is a sport that if you've been following it for 25 years, you're going to love it. If you've never seen the game before, you're going to come out here and you're going to have a nice time. We had that for Pro Wrestling Night. We had about 150, 160 people that were here, and I talked to a lot of the fans. And it was their first time ever coming out to a hockey game, and they loved it. And it's something that when you experience hockey live, there's something that's just infectious about it.
And even though I know NHL has been toning down the fighting a little bit and all, but it was nice to see on Pro Wrestling Day a hockey fight.
Well, that was scripted. And that our guy went over. It was a great fight. It was well booked.
Oh, that's awesome. Little hockey fight critique from WWE Writer Production Assistant. That's great. Robert, this is interesting to me too. Your coach. Now, there had to be a little smile on your face when the new coach comes in and this guy's his nickname is the Boogeyman.
Oh yeah, he's the Boogeyman and he's coming to get you. I was very excited about that. My dream was either to get him as a coach or to get Evander Kane as a player, and without announcing it, just for when he first comes through the tunnel, we can play the Vince McMahon clip of that's got to be Kane. That's the only reason I wanted him on the team.
That's great. And there's no better reason than that too.
For me personally, it's been an absolute blast having him, and he's a real fun guy. I know you had a chance to talk to him. He grew up going to see the matches as a kid.
Yeah, that's great. Up in Detroit. Yeah, it was awesome and all. And it just seemed like a good people person too. Tough guy, good coach, but also a good people person.
Oh yeah, and that's what you get with some of the best coaches. You get someone that can sit there and have a conversation with you and be able to effectively communicate. But when push comes to shove, if this guy needs to get fired up, he's going to get fired up.
Yeah, he was mentioning that Andre the Giant, Jimmy Snuka, they would travel from Canada, go over to Detroit and see the matches there and all, and he enjoyed it then. And it was cool that the Panthers, you guys brought this to have the Pro Wrestling Night last year, Pro Wrestling Day this year, and do that whole event. Robert, you're also working for Major League Wrestling, which is based in Orlando. You're a writer-producer for them, and there's that tie-in with Court Bauer because he was part of the writing team when you were part of the writing team, WWE. Is that something that then later on came to fruition? You worked together, he called you. How did that all work out for Major League Wrestling?
Sure. So I was on the writing team with Court Bauer and Alex Greenfield, and we were the three different versions of how you wind up on creative. Court was working, he had started at Major League Wrestling back in the early 2000s, but before that he had trained under Gary Hart, he had trained under Afa of the Wild Samoans to really learn the ins and outs of the business. So he was coming from a long-term booker perspective. Alex Greenfield was one of those Hollywood writers that they brought in, but Alex was a pure wrestling fan. He was writing horror movies, he was writing sci-fi movies, and really approached things from a really interesting storytelling dynamic. And then I was the guy that grew up as a fan and went to college to learn all of this and lucked himself into a job. And years later, Court started the MLW Podcast Network, which has their flagship show. Bruce Prichard's show is on there. They have a number of other podcasts, and him and Alex were doing a show called The Writers Room, where they talk to ex-WWE writers. And I had started the Twitter account, the WWE Creativist Twitter account, and those guys didn't know it was me. I was doing it purely just anonymously for fun, and I had sent Alex a DM saying it was me, and we reconnected through that. They had me come on the show, and then I started coming on monthly and eventually took over hosting the show. They've been putting on an event every WrestleMania weekend for this is now the fourth year, called Wale Mania, with the rapper Wale, who happens to be a huge wrestling fan because everybody's a huge wrestling fan deep down. And I went out to it last year, and those guys were talking about the possibility of doing putting together a one-off wrestling show. And it was called One Shot. We did it last October, and the idea was, what if we were able to put together a wrestling show with guys that were in creative or just still love the business without the overhead, without all the other issues and politics, without having to run it by Vince and run it by production and run it through the several different departments you need to, and just put out a pure wrestling show and just do it for fun. And we all got together along with MSL, Mr. St. Laurent, who in the small world that this is, I went to high school with him. We lost contact years and years ago, and then reconnected this past year, and we realized it was the same guys from high school. So the wrestling business is very incestuous, and it's great.
Mr. St. Laurent, I don't mean to interject.
Yeah.
I believe in wrestling. Team Vision Dojo up in Orlando. Great shows, great training up there. So I just wanted to throw that plug in.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I got to go to that wrestling school and for the first time in many years take a bump and realized I never want to take a bump again. But it was a labor of love, and the thing just took off. And we've been putting together shows monthly, and there'll be big things that we're going to be able to announce coming soon. I know we've already put it out there, but we had our first round of TV tapings. So all that information is going to be forthcoming in the next couple weeks.
That is